What would you do if your family decided your dreams weren't real? That's not a rhetorical question. I want you to really ask yourself, what would you do if the people who were supposed to believe in you didn't? My name's Abigail Thompson. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I was the invisible one, the background character in a family obsessed with its golden child, my sister, Stephanie. Growing up in suburban Minneapolis, our family was the picture of middle-class success. My parents, Richard and Diana, owned a local accounting firm. Nothing flashy, just enough to afford a 4-bedroom house, a country club membership, and college tuition for one daughter. Stephanie, 2 years younger, was everything they wanted in a child. Pretty sociable, academically solid, and above all, obedient. She followed the rules, dated the quarterback, joined student council, chose business school. Every step of her life came with nods of approval, proud smiles, and fully funded dreams. And then there was me. I was the quiet one. I read too much, talked too little, asked too many questions. I didn't care about brand-name jeans or high school dances. I started my first business at 16 customized student planners I designed and sold online. I was obsessed with efficiency structure aesthetics. To me, it wasn't a hobby, it was freedom. But to my parents, Abigail? My mother would say, peering over her glasses as I sketched wireframes at midnight. Why can't you focus on something practical? You're not going to make a living doodling to-do lists. Then the comparison would come. Look at your sister. She's got her applications in for Cornell and Duke. She's joining Beta Sigma. That's the kind of drive that gets you somewhere. It didn't matter how hard I worked. It didn't matter that I built a small e-commerce store from scratch while juggling AP classes and a part-time job. In their eyes, I was playing. Stephanie was building a future. I was wasting time. That narrative hardened when I chose my college major, hospitality management and business. My parents' response was, well, let's just say it wasn't subtle. Hospitality, my father asked, setting his fork down at dinner, like I'd just insulted his profession. So what, you want to be a housekeeper, a waitress? Is that what all this school was for? He didn't mean to sound cruel, but he did. And that became the norm. I didn't get angry, not outwardly. I just stopped expecting anything different. When college came, my parents poured every dollar they could into Stephanie's Ivy League tuition. Full-ride housing, books, spending money, the whole package. Me, I paid my own way. Loans, scholarships, tips from a hotel front desk job before sunrise, classes during the day, waiting tables at an upscale bistro at night. There were nights I fell asleep in the supply closet between shifts. I didn't have time to be bitter. I was too busy surviving. And then something changed. It started with a professor named Rachel Winters. She was sharp, elegant, brutally honest. A woman who'd run 5-star resorts across Europe and returned to teach because, as she put it, the next generation deserves better leaders. She saw my final project, a redevelopment proposal for an old downtown hotel, and called me into her office. You have an eye, she told me, flipping through my report. Most students see properties for what they are. You see what they could become. That's rare. That sentence stuck to my ribs like food after famine. Someone believed in me. Someone saw me. With Rachel's help, I landed an internship at the Meridian Hotel Group during my senior year. I wasn't fetching coffee. I was writing reports, analyzing revenue leaks, mapping operational flaws. One day, I left a proposal on the wrong desk, James Harrison's, the regional director. I panicked when I realized he was supposed to get it last. I assumed I was about to be fired for overstepping. Instead, I was offered a job. This report, he said, pointing to my analysis, is sharper than anything I've paid consultants $10,000 for. We need people who think like you. When I called my parents to tell them, my mother said, well, at least you'll have steady employment. That's nice. Stephanie just got a position at Goldman Sachs. By the way, I remember standing in the hallway of my tiny off-campus apartment, staring at my phone as her words echoed. Steady employment. That's what I was to them. Not talented, not ambitious, just tolerable. After that, I stopped calling. They never knew when I became the youngest hotel manager in Meridian's history. They didn't know I designed a loyalty program that boosted regional revenue by 15%. They never asked. And I never offered. Because by then I'd realized something important. Their silence wasn't just ignorance. It was a choice. They had chosen to believe I was less, and they clung to that belief with white-knuckled comfort. At 28, I walked away from Meridian and opened my own boutique hotel consulting firm. I used every penny I'd saved, every investor I'd charmed, and every mistake I'd cataloged. A year later, I bought my first property, the Athena, a crumbling but once glorious Art Deco hotel in downtown Minneapolis. Everyone said it was a bad investment, everyone except me. I renovated it room by room, rebuilt the staff from the ground up, rebranded the experience. Within 18 months, it was booked solid with clients who valued exclusivity, elegance, and discretion. And I moved into the penthouse suite, my home. By my 32nd birthday, I owned 5 boutique hotels across the Midwest, all profitable, all branded under my own group, all mine. And still to my family, I was the one who'd never quite figured it out. But the Athena would change everything. I just didn't know how dramatically. Yet. They thought I was fetching coffee. I was rewriting the business model. I never planned to keep my success a secret forever. But the silence from my family had turned into a kind of shield. Every time I imagined telling them about the Athena, the consulting firm, the 5 hotels, they were already talking over me in my mind, dismissing it, diminishing it. So I let them keep their assumptions. They believed I was working front desk somewhere, maybe coordinating corporate events if I was lucky. They didn't ask for updates and I didn't offer them. Instead, I built. Day by day, I turned the Athena into the gold standard for boutique hospitality in Minneapolis. My guests weren't just travelers, they were returning VIPs, authors, tech executives, artists, visiting diplomats. We'd host private dinners, political fundraisers, gallery openings, and always with discretion. That's what built our reputation. My staff became my chosen family. People who saw value in service, in excellence, in ambition. And chief among them was Michael Chin. I'd hired him after an unsettling incident with a high-profile guest stalker. Former military intelligence, calm under pressure with an eye for detail that rivaled my own. At first, he was just our security lead. But it didn't take long for Michael to become my closest advisor and, if I'm honest, my anchor. He never treated me like the quiet daughter or the black sheep. To Michael, I was simply the CEO, the woman building an empire. We had a shared language strategy, standards execution, and he never once asked if I'd gotten lucky. Then came my father's 60th birthday. I hadn't attended a family event in 2 years, always too busy, always a project deadline. In truth, I just couldn't stomach the forced smiles and sideways glances. But this time, something tugged at me. Maybe it was age, maybe it was curiosity, or maybe I wanted to be seen. That's when the group text arrived from my mother, planning Dad's birthday dinner, looking at Giovanni's or the Athena, thoughts, the Athena, my hotel. I stared at the screen in stunned silence. Of all the upscale places they could have chosen, my mother had unknowingly listed my flagship property, my home. I should have told them right then. But something stopped me. Years of dismissal, pride. Or maybe it was instinct. I saw an opportunity, one I didn't even realize I'd been waiting for. The Athena has a great reputation, I texted back. Their private dining room is exceptional. Within 2 minutes, my mother replied, "It's probably out of our budget. And yours, obviously." I didn't flinch. I'd heard that tone my entire life. "I can help with costs," I offered. Her answer was immediate. "We don't need charity, Abigail. Stephanie's offered to cover half. We'll figure it out. Charity. Not support. Not generosity. Charity." It wasn't worth fighting. Not yet. So I simply replied I might be able to get an industry discount. "Want me to check?" She said fine reluctantly. And with that, the plan was in motion. That afternoon, I called Jackson, my general manager at the Athena. "Hey," I said, trying not to laugh, "my family's planning a surprise birthday dinner here next month. They don't know I own it." His silence lasted 3 full seconds. You're kidding. I wish. This is either the setup to a Netflix drama or the best prank ever. Maybe both, I said. Here's what I need. I laid out every detail they'd book under the name Thompson they'd haggle over, price they'd ask for special requests. We'd quote them half the actual rate. I'd cover the rest quietly. They'd get the best room, the Winston suite, champagne, appetizers, my father's favorite bourbon, a 5-star experience curated in secret. And when they ask if the owner's attending, Jackson asked. Treat me like any other guest, I replied. I'll make my entrance at the right moment. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched the reservations unfold from behind the scenes. My mother called repeatedly, questioning the discounted rate, triple-checking the menu. My executive chef designed a custom-coursed meal. The floral team replicated my father's favorite garden. Then Stephanie called. I hadn't spoken to her one-on-one in over a year. So you're actually coming? She asked, voice laced with skepticism. Of course, I said. It's Dad's 60th. Mom said you got a deal at the Athena. How exactly I kept my voice light. Industry stuff. I've done consulting work for a few hotels. There was a pause, then a small scoff. Well, just try to dress appropriately. Okay, the Athena is pretty upscale. I can lend you something if you don't have anything suitable. I glanced down at my custom Valentino suit and smiled. I'll manage, I said. She wasn't done. Just don't embarrass us. She hung up before I could respond. Those 4 words, don't embarrass us, hit me harder than I expected. They always assumed I was the embarrassment, that Stephanie was the success, and I was the secret they tolerated. So I made a call. Michael. I said, I need your help staging something precise. He chuckled. You want drama? I want clarity, I said. Sometimes people only see the truth when it slaps them across the face. He didn't even hesitate. I'm in. They booked my hotel, insulted my job, and blocked me from entering. The twist, I owned the building. The night before my father's birthday, everything was in place. The Winston suite had been transformed into an elegant dining space the wine was decanting. The candles selected the final guest list submitted. And I was calm. Calm because I'd already rehearsed it in my head 1,000 times. What they'd say, how they'd look, what they'd assume, and most of all, how it would all come crashing down. Michael and I ran through the logistics one last time my arrival. His cue, the cameras, the pacing of my entrance. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about truth. Visible, undeniable, and most importantly, on my terms. The next day, a light snowfall dusted the city. The Athena's Art Deco facade shimmered like a Hollywood set. Staff bustled with precision. Guests arrived in chauffeured town cars and somewhere inside that lobby. My family was already there. I watched from my private office eyes on the live security feeds. My mother had arrived early, naturally inspecting the decor like a client at an open house. She wore her signature important occasion suit, the same one from Stephanie's graduation, Cornell move-in and law school acceptance dinner. My father looked stiff but pleasant, nodding appreciatively at the mural-covered ceilings I'd commissioned. I watched him adjust his tie 6 times. Nervous energy. He hated surprises. Then Stephanie arrived. She looked like she was stepping into a gala, not a private family dinner. Hair curled, makeup impeccable, clinging to her new boyfriend, Derek, like a socialite to her accessory. Her voice cut through the air, loud, performative, explaining to the concierge how to handle the party check-in as if she were the host. I smiled, dry and silent. This was their show. I was just waiting for the perfect moment to change the script. As they were led to the Winston suite, Michael texted everyone seated. Showtime 5 minutes, I replied. I slipped into my gown, deep navy silk with a single shoulder strap. Classy, sleek, intentional. I exited my office, took the private elevator down, and walked around the block in heels through the soft snow. I wanted to enter through the front like any other guest. Just outside, the Robertson and Clark families were checking in. Neighbors, golf buddies, all part of the elaborate guest list. I let them pass. Then as I stepped through the doors, warm air hitting my face, a familiar voice snapped across the lobby. Abigail Stephanie. She stood near the hall, hands on her hips, jaw slack. "You actually showed up." Her smile wasn't warm. It was sharp, the kind that doesn't touch the eyes. "You clean up nice," she added. "Did you borrow that?" I didn't flinch. "Hello, Stephanie. You look lovely, too." Her gaze dropped to my earrings, small, flawless diamonds, and back up. "Mom was worried you'd bail, or show up late, or worse, show up looking like you just clocked out of your... whatever it is you do these days." "I'm exactly where I want to be," I said calmly. She laughed lightly, clearly not believing me. Then her eyes drifted behind me. Her jaw stiffened. "Oh no. Please don't tell me you brought a date." I turned to see Michael walking in sharp in a dark tailored suit. His presence made the lobby staff instinctively stand straighter. Professional respect. Before I could respond, my mother appeared beside Stephanie, eyes flashing toward Michael. "Abigail," she said coolly. "Who is this? We didn't plan for additional seating." "This is..." I began, but Michael smoothly cut in. "Michael Chin, head of security for the Athena Hotel. I just need a quick word with Miss Thompson." My mother stiffened. Security. What has she done now? Nothing at all. Michael said neutral but firm. Stephanie suddenly stepped in front of me, physically blocking my path, literally standing between me and the restaurant. "Is there an issue with her reservation?" she asked Michael, speaking as if I weren't there. "We can cover her portion if it's a payment thing." My jaw clenched. My mother leaned in, voice dropping to that whisper she used in every church pew and gala line. "Abigail, don't embarrass the family. If you're struggling financially again, you should have told us." I glanced around. The lobby had gone quiet. Guests had paused. Staff had frozen. And from the corner, Jackson, my general manager, stood watching with veiled amusement. He caught my eye. I gave him the slightest nod. That was the cue. Michael cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thompson, Miss Stephanie, I believe you're unaware. You're currently blocking the owner of this establishment from entering her own hotel." Silence. Stephanie blinked. My mother swayed. And then Jackson stepped forward, smiling like a seasoned maitre d' at the opera. "Miss Thompson," he said, extending his hand with reverence, "everything is prepared per your instructions. The 1962 Bordeaux from your personal collection is decanting, and Chef Elise was honored by your menu selections." My mother's face paled. "Your personal collection?" I smiled softly. "Yes, Mom. From the cellar. Here, at the Athena." Stephanie's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "That's not possible," she whispered. And yet, I gestured toward the grand dining room. "Shall we? You never asked. That's why you never knew." I walked toward the Winston suite with the poise of someone who had nothing left to prove, because for once, finally, I didn't. As we passed staff members, each one greeted me with warmth and respect. "Evening, Miss Thompson." "Lovely to see you, Miss Thompson." They weren't just being polite. They were recognizing their boss. Every Miss Thompson spoken in front of my mother and sister was a chisel slowly cracking the illusion they had built around who I was, who they thought I could never be. Just before we entered the private dining room, Stephanie reached out and grabbed my arm, hard. "Why didn't you tell us?" she hissed, voice trembling with something halfway between panic and disbelief. I looked down at her hand until she let go, smoothed my sleeve, met her eyes. "You never asked." That was it. Not a dramatic speech, not a declaration of revenge, just a simple truth. They had never asked. Because they were too busy assuming, too comfortable believing the version of me they had written in their heads, a version that failed to thrive, that needed their pity, their hand-me-downs, their condescension. We walked into the Winston suite. The room fell silent. My father, seated at the head of the table, looked up and froze. His brow furrowed as he scanned my face, then the way staff moved around me. Then Michael, standing just behind me. It clicked quickly for him. "Abigail," he asked, as if I'd returned from the dead. I walked up to him and smiled. "Happy birthday, Dad." The next hour unfolded like a surreal stage play. Some people acted like they were in a farce, others a tragedy. My father warmed slowly, clearly, still processing. My mother kept her smile frozen in place like porcelain under pressure. Stephanie vacillated between wide-eyed admiration and sullen silence. Derek, surprisingly, was the most gracious of all. He leaned over at one point and said, "Incredible place. You've really built something exceptional." Stephanie shot him a glare, but he didn't retract the compliment. The real turning point came during dessert. My executive chef wheeled in a custom-made bourbon caramel cake, my father's favorite. As she lit the candles, my mother leaned in and asked quietly, "So, the vacation to Hawaii, that was you, I didn't look away." "Yes." "The checks at Christmas, the upgrades to the firm's retirement plan, the anonymous donations, all me. But Mom said those were from our cousin who hit it big with crypto." Stephanie said, clearly stunned. I laughed. Of course she did. Heaven forbid I succeed in a way she didn't orchestrate or approve. Neither of them had a response. As the evening wound down, Jackson handed out personalized gift baskets for each guest. My father hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm proud of you, Abby. Truly proud." Stephanie lingered after most of the guests had left. "So, all those times we thought you couldn't afford to join us for vacations or contribute to family gifts." "I was building this," I replied, gesturing around the glowing, elegant room. "And I did contribute. Just not in the ways you expected." For once, she had no comeback, only silence. Derek gently touched her shoulder. "Let's go." To me, he added, "Seriously, thank you for the evening. And the lesson. A lot of people needed it tonight." Once they left, I kicked off my heels and retreated to my private office. Michael was already there, sleeves rolled, tie loosened. He raised his glass. That was quite the reveal. I took a long sip of Bordeaux and exhaled. I feel relieved, vindicated, exhausted, and sad. All of the above, exactly. "Your father seemed sincere," he said. I nodded. He was. He always had more capacity to understand. He just didn't use it. Michael leaned forward, suddenly serious. "And now what?" That was the question, wasn't it? What comes after the curtain falls? The performance is over. Now come the boundaries. The morning after the party, I didn't bounce out of bed with satisfaction. I woke up to 17 missed calls, 23 texts, and one email that stopped me in my tracks. From my father. Subject, "I owe you an apology." The message itself was short. "When you're ready to talk, I'm ready to listen. Many apologies. No demands, no guilt-tripping, just readiness." It was the opposite of my mother's voicemails, which were full of outrage, thinly disguised as confusion. "Why didn't you tell us? How dare you ambush us like that? Do you think this makes us look bad? This is not how families behave, Abigail." Stephanie's messages were more chaotic, some frantic and defensive, others suspiciously sweet. "I want to understand. Why are you freezing us out? You always made things harder than they needed to be." I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Dr. Hayes, my therapist. I'd seen her off and on since I bought the Athena, mostly for stress management. But this was a new level. Emergency session, I told her assistant. Family implosion, emotional fallout, possible boundary revolution. That afternoon, I sat in her sunlit office overlooking Loring Park and exhaled everything I'd carried for the past 24 hours. The confusion, the vindication, the fatigue. Dr. Hayes as always listened without interruption. Then she asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Is your goal to rebuild the relationship or reclaim your identity?" And just like that, I knew the answer. Both. But only if I can do it without sacrificing myself again. We drafted what she called emotional non-negotiables. Boundaries that were clear, fair, and firm. I would no longer tolerate minimization of my career or lifestyle. I would not be guilted into family roles that dismissed who I had become. I would maintain autonomy in every relationship. I would protect my peace even if it meant distance. By the time I left her office, I felt more grounded than I had in years. That night, I called my father and told him we could meet the next day, alone. He arrived 10 minutes early, always a punctual man. Jackson brought him up to my office. This view, he said, looking out over the skyline. "You built this." I nodded. "Every inch." He sat uncharacteristically quiet. "I've been going over everything you said," he began, trying to make sense of the gaps, the silence. "I just didn't realize how often we dismissed you." "You didn't have to say it out loud," I said. "You said it with every comparison, every doubt, every time you changed the subject when I brought up my life." He winced. "I thought we were being practical. We didn't understand your world, so we leaned into what we knew, which was Stephanie," I said plainly, "and her path." He didn't argue, didn't defend. "I was wrong," he said. "We were wrong." The simplicity of that statement hit harder than any dramatic apology ever could. I appreciate that, I said, and I want a relationship, but on new terms. He nodded. "Define them." So I did. I laid out every boundary Dr. Hayes and I had crafted. I told him I wouldn't hide my success anymore, that I wouldn't sit silently at family gatherings while Stephanie played hostess and my mother played gatekeeper, that if they wanted me in their lives, they had to really see me. He agreed, without resistance. Also, I added, I've instructed my attorney to remove the anonymity from the financial gifts I've given over the years. His brows rose. "That was you. The investment returns I've been supplementing your retirement account since I sold my second hotel." He sat back stunned. "All this time, we treated you like a charity case, and you were the one holding the safety net. I didn't do it for praise," I said, "but I won't let it be rewritten either." When he left, I felt cleansed, not just vindicated, but empowered. Now came the harder part, my mother. She showed up the next morning. No appointment, expected to be ushered into my office immediately. Jackson, ever the professional, greeted her at the front desk. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thompson. Do you have a meeting scheduled with Miss Thompson?" Her outrage was visible on the security monitor. I watched the whole thing. "I'm her mother," she snapped. "I understand, ma'am, but Miss Thompson has a full schedule. I'll gladly check for an available window later today or tomorrow." She left in a flurry of indignation. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. I picked up. "Abigail, I just came to see you and your staff told me I need an appointment. I'm your mother. Would you drop by Stephanie's law firm and demand to be shown straight to her office?" Silence. "This is a business, Mom. I have meetings, schedules, responsibilities. It's not the same. It really is." We paused, breathing across a canyon of misunderstanding. "We need to talk about what happened at the dinner," she said. "I agree, but only if you're ready to talk about how I've been treated for 32 years, not just one night." After a long pause, she exhaled. "Fine, we'll meet, but with a third party. That therapist you like." I blinked. That was unexpected. "Deal. You treated me like a ghost. Now you'll hear me like a daughter." 2 weeks later, we sat in Dr. Hayes' office. My mother, arms folded, pearl earrings gleaming like armor. Me composed with 1,000 unsaid words, sitting behind my eyes. Dr. Hayes set the tone with grace. "We're here to repair a relationship that's been strained by misunderstanding, miscommunication, and long-standing emotional patterns." My mother cut in. "I just want to know why Abigail felt the need to embarrass us at that party." I didn't flinch. It wasn't about embarrassment. It was about truth. "You're just not used to me being seen." She scoffed. "That's ridiculous." Dr. Hayes gently raised her hand. "Let's allow Abigail to speak fully before responding." I turned to my mother. "You always told me who I was. Not once did you ask. You painted me as sensitive, dramatic, difficult. You celebrated Stephanie's wins while ignoring mine. You told people I was trying to find myself even when I was managing multi-million-dollar properties. You said, 'Abigail's doing something with hotels, I think,' as if I were running a lemonade stand." I paused. "Let it sink in. I never needed you to brag about me. I just needed you to stop acting like I was a disappointment for not fitting your mold." Her jaw tightened. "We did our best." "No," I said. "You did your best for Stephanie. For me, you did what was convenient." There was silence. Then unexpectedly, her voice cracked. "I didn't understand your world," she said. "You were always so independent. It felt like you didn't want us involved. I wanted you to ask, to show curiosity, not control." We sat in that truth together. "I can't undo all of it," she said. "I don't expect you to," I replied. "But if we move forward, it has to be with honesty. I won't shrink anymore to fit your comfort." Dr. Hayes smiled gently. "That's a fair boundary." By the end of the session, my mother hadn't transformed into someone new, but something had shifted. A softening, an acknowledgement. That was enough. 2 months later. The Thompson family dynamic had changed. Not completely, not perfectly, but permanently. Stephanie emailed me a real apology, no qualifiers. She even asked to tour the Athena and learn how I'd built it. I gave her the tour, cautiously. We weren't sisters again, not yet, but we were no longer enemies pretending to be allies. My father and I met for monthly lunches. He asked questions now, listened, really listened. As for my mother, she booked a weekend suite at the Athena, left me a note after she checked out. "Your staff says you're the best boss they've ever had. I believe them now." Mom. It wasn't a parade of praise, but it was real, and real was all I had ever asked for. And me, I expanded the Athena brand, bought a distressed lakeside property, and started renovations for a second boutique hotel, the Abigail on Nokomis. This time, my name would be in lights from day one. Jackson became my partner in the new project. We toasted our first construction day with champagne at sunrise. "You know what I still can't get over," he said, clinking glasses. "The way your mother used to say, 'Abigail's not cut out for leadership.'" I laughed. "And now I sign her room service receipts. You can spend years begging people to see you, to value you, to love you the way you always needed. Or you can build a life so rooted in your truth that their validation becomes unnecessary, their absence survivable, and your presence undeniable." I stopped waiting for an apology. I stopped begging to belong. I became the woman no one could ignore. And this time, they had to knock on my door to be let in.